Jaden Rashada has been released from his NLI, not NIL, NLI, although it has to do with NIL. Very confusing acronym era that we're in CFB. Speaking of which, Jaden Rashada, the very, very brief backstory there is he was committed to, well, multiple schools, ended up committing to Florida, signing with Florida, big-time quarterback prospect out of Pittsburgh, California. And so then it came time for him to enroll, and the NIL agreement, it turns out, was not agreed upon, and so there was a lot of back and forth and gnashing of teeth, and ultimately he requested his release. Florida gave him his release. This was bound to happen somewhere. It just so happens that it was Florida where it happened. Now, this is not going to be the norm 3 years from now. My hope is it's not the norm 3 months from now. I hope there are a lot of valuable lessons being learned, not just by Florida. I can promise you they've learned some lessons. I mean, Texas or Nebraska or Michigan State or whoever. I hope everyone's been watching, because the truth is, contrary to popular belief, you don't always have to learn lessons the hard way. Sometimes you can watch someone else burn their hand on the stove and say, I don't think I'm going to touch that stove when it's hot. And likewise, you need to get your collectives in order. If you haven't already, you need to get them in order. You need to know whose hands are on the wheel. You need to know who are the mouthpieces who are speaking for your program, and you need to be working in unison, in lockstep. Now, there may be people in certain athletic departments across Gainesville and the country screaming back at me right now, we'd love to, but we're not allowed to. Our coaching staff can't work hand in hand with the collective, and to that I say, stay tuned for about 5 minutes. I will speak your mind to the powers that be for you. In the meantime, not so shockingly, a lot of blame has been passed around here. And blame is fun. Blame is popular. Blame is cool. Yeah, okay. It's easy to blame. How are you going to fix it? What are the fixes? What are the lessons being learned here? You know, at Florida, I think first and foremost, they've learned the hard way how not to do things. They learned via flushing out the pipes where the cracks are in their infrastructure. And they also learned that there may be people representing the University of Florida, not necessarily employed by the University of Florida, that don't need to be representing that brand in those particular capacities. You could look at how NIL is being handled university to university right now, kind of like your family reunion. You don't really get to pick who shows up. Your family is your family. And NIL just kind of got dropped on us. I know that for a long time it was rumored that we're going to be able to pay players. Hey, this thing may be coming. In reality, it happened pretty quick. And collectives, as a term in college football, it kind of appeared pretty quick out of nowhere. And here's the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is there was not this long hiring and vetting process. It would be great if there were, but in reality, the folks who were already fundraising for you or who were handling your booster clubs, they just happened to be thrust into some of these roles, or they thrust themselves into some of these roles, and they had no business being in that role. There's also a power dynamic. If previously you had been anonymous, and all of a sudden you can be the face of Pate State recruiting via the NIL and collective, and you don't necessarily have to answer to the head coach, then yeah, that's attractive to some folks. Doesn't mean you're qualified. So Florida's learned that lesson the hard way. I think a number of other programs have, through osmosis, watched this and learned the hard way. You've got to mitigate the optics damage now. Florida looks bad. They look bad. I don't know this to be true, but it wouldn't shock me if some other players had been deterred from going to Florida. I'm thinking Walker Howard, for example. I don't know where he was ever going to go. He may have always been headed to Ole Miss. I can tell you it certainly didn't help matters with Florida that fresh in everyone's mind is, hey, a quarterback was going to go there, and he was excited about going there. And then all of a sudden he wasn't excited anymore, and it's because you couldn't fulfill your end of the deal you promised him. And so those details will come out one day. My point is, optics matter. In some cases, whether they're true or not, they matter. Now, if you got some stuff out there that is glaringly false that's being said about your program, there's really only one thing you can do, and that's get in front of a microphone yourself and clear it up. And I don't know that that would be in the best interest of anyone there right now, or would it? You know, that's open-ended. I don't run PR for Florida. I'm saying I think there is some blame that's being shouldered by folks inside that athletic department that really shouldn't be shouldered. Now, if you're trying to man up and you're saying, hey, to whom much is given, much is expected, and much has to be borne in the face of criticism, okay, that's all well and good. I don't view this as a Napier thing. I don't view this as a Strickland thing. I don't. And I can promise you I've done due diligence on that front. But be that as it may, it's a problem no matter whose fault it is. So they got to fix that. And they got to replenish their roster. And they got to get a quarterback in there. Now, hopefully they've already got him on campus. And I'm sure I could find a lot of you down there who could sell me on a guy already on campus. You've got to do that for me. You've got to sell me. Because I'm not sold. I'm not sold that your winning quarterback of the future is on campus right now. You try and sell me on Graham Mertz. I've tried to sell myself on him before. I think Max Brown, ironically, is the guy you could probably have the easiest time selling me on. You're not selling me on Jack Miller being a difference maker for Florida. You're not. Could be wrong, but he's going to have to prove it to me on the field for me to be wrong there. Now, as for college football and a lot of the lessons being learned out there, like I said, there's one steering wheel. Shouldn't be many hands on it. But in some places there are, and Florida's not the first place that's had trouble with this. They're the most high-profile recent example of it. We just talked a couple of weeks ago about Iowa and how they're having trouble up there because the actual athletic department doesn't want to give one bit of access to the collective, even though the collective seems to have pure intentions and they want to work hand in hand with the athletic department. But the athletic department has, in my opinion, some very arcane reasons why they won't do so. This is a generic warning. Be very careful keeping your distance from folks who just are going to have increasingly more power as the dynamics continue to shift in this sport. It's better not to view your NIL collectives as your enemy, but even if you view them with a contentious eye, it's better to have them in the room. It's better to know what everyone's saying and everyone's thinking. And if you hear a conversation over here in the corner about them offering mid four-star outside linebacker prospect who your coaching staff's not even interested in offering, you better go ahead and nip that in the bud. Because if you don't, those conversations are still happening. They're just happening outside your purview, and all of a sudden the kid's got a sack full of promised cash to him, and your coaching staff doesn't even want him. Now, what do you do there? Well, you break a promise to a kid. That's not what happened with Rashada. I'm saying this is an example, if you don't have your house and your affairs in order, of what could happen. Also, from the NCAA side of things, as is usually the case in this sport, I'm not one to bang on the NCAA relentlessly. It's just warranted a lot of the time. And the reality of the situation right now is a lot of this was just dropped on athletic departments and coaching staffs. And then the NCAA just left. They said, here you go. We're out. Handle it. Oh, and by the way, before we go, you picture them getting in the car and they've backed out of the driveway. They roll down the passenger's window and they say, you guys can't work with your collective. Coaches can't control the money. Okay, bye. And then they peel out. And your coaching staff's like, what just happened? So wait, let me get this straight now. We can pay players, well, not exactly pay to play. They can make money, and we know full well that many programs, the second that this gets put into law, are going to abuse that. If we want to follow the letter of the law, we're going to handcuff ourselves because our coaches can't control the purse strings. Some collective full of people who have never coached a day in their life and have no access. They don't have key cards to our building because they're not employed by our university. They're the ones who are going to handle the money, and this is supposed to be sustainable. Is that right? And the NCAA is down the block and around the corner, and they yell, figure it out! That's where we are right now. Now, you want to know why coaches whine a lot, quote unquote, complain a lot? It's not because their job is hard. It's because in some cases their job has been made impossible. How do you navigate this right now? I mean, I want you to tell me what the proper path is when your entire job depends on acquiring talent, and then all of a sudden the legislative body that controls your world says you can do this thing now, but you can't control the thing that you can do now. But a lot of people who have no expertise and no business controlling it can control it, and we're going to pop you if you violate this law. Where's the? I see a lot of lose. Where's the win? Where's the clean path forward there? So you want to know why people complain? It's not because their job's hard. It's because in some cases, the very entity that is supposed to clean it up and make the path clearer has actually made the path impossible and then made you drive two-wheel drive down the muddiest of roads that you could possibly find. That, in a nutshell, is why you have situations like the Jaden Rashada situation. And if you think it's as clean and neat as saying, shame on Billy Napier, shame on Scott Strickland, they should have known. Okay, maybe they should have. I'm just telling you there are about 17 more layers to that onion, and this is not necessarily a Florida problem. It just so happened to be that Florida ended up having the egg on their face for a problem that eventually is going to face a lot of universities.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.